If you've ever been told you should write a book, then you should write a book. In his foreword to You Should Write a Book, multiple best-selling author David Meerman Scott says there's no better way to market your business than to write a book. There's an interview with VERNE, founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization, on how to use your book to attract new clients. There's an interview with Professor LYNDA GRATTON of London Business School on how to use your book to develop your influence globally. There's another interview with former CFO Stephen Berry on how to use your book to launch a speaking business. There's an interview with Daniel Priestley, founder of Dent Global, on how to use your book as the cornerstone of your marketing. In the interview with Dr. Tommy Weir, a scientist in residence at MIT, we'll show you how to use your book to position your products and services. There's an interview with Marshall Goldsmith on how to use your book to demonstrate your unique expertise and processes. There's another interview with Rob Moore, the disruptive entrepreneur, on how to use your book to extend your brand and create new product lines. There's an interview on building a professional service firm with Dom Morehouse, who created Morehouse Consulting, then grew it and sold it to BT in just 5 years. There's also a case study interview with ALOK SINHA, former CEO of Capita Services in India, on how a corporate executive can use a book to become a global thought leader. There's an interview with Penny Power OBE on how to write a memoir that matters. In the interview with Peter Larange, one of the best-known business school deans of all time, by the way, you'll learn how writing your book can clarify your thinking and your thought leadership. In the interview with Karen Dillon, the former editor of Harvard Business Review, you'll learn how to engage and inspire your community to listen and act on your advice. In the interview with Todd Satterston, former president of 800 CEO Reed, you'll learn new ways to publish and distribute your book. And finally, there's an interview with Steve Piasanti, the founder of Barrett Kohler Publishers and probably the best editor in the world, on how to market your book in the 21st century. That's the lineup of interviewees and case studies that we've put into You Should Write a Book. This is for thought leaders, trusted advisors, anyone who wants to build credibility and authority to win new business or to change the world. You can order the hardback or the Kindle edition right now on Amazon, but don't forget to download the PDF edition and get all the book bonuses for free at youshouldwriteabook.co.uk. Do it now. Good morning. If you're in the UK, good afternoon, good evening. You could be watching this live. You might be watching this sometime else on the recording. My name is Steven Sonsino. Welcome back. And if you have any questions as we go through the interview with David Meerman Scott, post them in the chat. I will see them and possibly answer them in the chat, but also I'll collect them together and answer them at the end for you. This series of live streams has been inspired by a project that Jacqueline Moore, my wife, and I have been working on for some time now. You Should Write a Book. This is the proof of the cover. The book's due to be delivered sometime this week, so I'm looking forward to that, and I'll show it to you later. You should write a book. A lot of people want to write a book and don't know how or need some inspiration. And 2 years ago, Jacqueline and I started interviewing a range of amazing thought leaders, trusted advisors, and we're sharing those now with you, partly through the authors.fm podcast, authors channel. Go to authors.fm and you'll see all the podcasts there. Season 1 went down really well. Season 2 came up earlier this year. Season 3, we're about to launch that, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Today's interview, though, is with David Meerman Scott. Now, he's the author of the now classic New Rules of Marketing and PR. And if you don't have a copy of this book, by the way, you should. It's now in its 7th edition. Get that. It's been reprinted 7 complete times. Absolute huge Business Week bestseller. So take a look at that if you're interested in general thoughts on marketing. But in the interview, I particularly wanted to catch up with David on what are his thoughts on books as a mechanism for marketing an idea, a person, or a business. And you'll get some really cool insights about that from him in just a few minutes. I also wanted to share with you what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be doing much more interactive material, sharing with you my take on Tom Peters' books. Tom Peters, who The Economist called the Uber guru. He's written some amazing books, but he writes them in a very specific way, and I want to share that with you tomorrow. Also, later this week, I'll share with you my interview with Marty Neumeier, author of Zag, which is one of the best business books of all time, one of the top 100 business books of all time, according to 800 CEO Read. Zag is just an awesome title, don't you think? When everybody zigs, you should zag. We'll talk more about that in a couple of days' time. So these live streams will be happening at this time every day this week. I'm nervous. And what we'll do is share with you some of the interviews, and then we'll do some interactive sessions. So what I want to do now is invite you to share any questions that you have in the chat. I will answer them as we go through. I hope you've got a notebook and pen, if you are old school like me, to take lots of notes, and we'll compare notes at the end. The interview is about 30 minutes long or so, and I might cut it at that point to see how we get on. We should be finished completely here in an hour by 10 o'clock GMT. I look forward to catching up with you at the end. So listen, let me introduce you to David Meerman Scott. David Meerman Scott. I mean, you're an awesome speaker. Anybody who sees you on stage or on your YouTube videos knows you. You're a performance artist, I think, is how you describe yourself.
I feel as if it's my art. So you're absolutely right, Steven. I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't play a musical instrument, but I can get on a stage.
And you are one of, if not the most preeminent writer on marketing and public relations in the modern age, I think. And
thank you, I appreciate
that. The key book that people know you for is The New Rules of Marketing and PR. And we'll get to that in a minute. But you've written a whole host of other things, real-time marketing and PR, the Grateful Dead story.
Ooh, I'm honored that you actually have all those books physically. Thank you very much.
I have been reading these for years, my friend.
It warms my heart that you actually have those books. I appreciate it.
And it goes back to the new rules of PR. So you're big into PDFs and documents and all these things. And when I look at your body of work,
sure.
And I think it says, it's right there in the early pages of New Rules of Marketing and PR. You know, the web's changed, you say, you know, not only the rules of marketing PR, but also the business book model. And I want to talk to you about books, but you know, you talk about the new rules of marketing and PR, and it's all about urgency. Newsjacking, you coined this phrase, newsjacking, which has now been entered in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah.
My heavens. I mean, I have to ask you, you know, given everything that you say and everything that you teach and everything that you write about the new economy of the web, and why write books, David? Why write books?
Why write books? That's an easy one, because that's getting paid to do your marketing. That's the way I look at it, is I put out a book And I sell enough books now that I actually generate reasonable income from the books themselves. But the books get out there, and people like you who I've never met find my books, maybe read them, and then know about who I am. And then, you're having me on your show, which I deeply appreciate. And had I not written the book, we would not be talking right now. So I think it's one of the greatest ways to market a person or an idea. And in many cases, it's also possible to market a company with a book. I think it's kind of an unfair advantage if you want to look at it that way. And it's been fabulous for me and for my career, but I've met and have had conversations with hundreds of authors, business book authors. I'm not talking about novelists, business book authors, and everybody. Nobody regrets not writing that book. There are a lot of people. Sorry, nobody regrets writing a book, and I think that you can regret 20, 30 years from now, not writing the book you had in your mind. But I've never run across a single person who's regretted going through the effort of what it takes to put one together.
You make a very valid point. People think it takes a vast amount of effort, and it can. You can spend years putting something together, but you must by now have some sort of mechanism or process to go through. I mean, and I know it changes because you do collaborate with some people. We'll talk about Fanocracy a little bit later on.
Sure.
But do you have a set process? You also, I know you pre-release some of your material on the blog and in articles and so on. Is there a set process for you, David?
Not really, because it's varied over the books I've written. I've written 11, and just between you and me, I'm working on another one right now, although it's too early to talk about. I generally follow the following pattern. I write about things on my blog. I tweet about things. I talk about things from a stage. And when I find that that is resonating with people, I get comments on the blog. I get people who interact with me on the social networks, especially Twitter. When somebody comes up to me after a talk and wants to interact, or even from the stage, if I'm doing Q&A and they ask about something, that's where I say, oh, okay, well, something I'm talking about is resonating here. There's people who are interested in this topic. And then I'll explore it some more on the blog or in a speech or on social networks. And if it continues to resonate, both for me, as in it's interesting to me, as well as with the audience, then I think, okay, I think I got an idea for a book here, and I'll continue to explore it on the blog. I won't say it's a book. I won't say, oh, yeah, these last 15 blog posts have been the start of a book. I almost never do that. But then at a certain point, I think, okay, this is really feeling like it's a book. And then I'll go back and I use a tool called Scrivener, which is a writing tool I really like. And then I'll copy and paste all those blog posts into Scrivener. And, sometimes I have a quarter of the book already there. And of course, it needs a lot of editing and work, but at least, there's already content there. Yeah. And then it's really, really important for me with a book to have a couple of things. Number one, it's very important for me that I see patterns in the universe that other people don't see. I want anything that I'm writing about to feel like it's original. And I purposely don't read business books from other people. I mean, there's a few exceptions. I read everything Seth Godin ever writes, but there's very few exceptions. I don't read business books from other people because I want to be very original myself. And I really want that idea to be a new pattern that I've identified. You mentioned marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead. People hadn't written about the Grateful Dead as the pioneers of social networks before Mark Zuckerberg was even born. That was something that, that's interesting to me. I should write about that. With the New Rules of Marketing and PR, one of the other books that you've read, the pattern in the universe I saw there was in the early stages of the web, marketing on the web is not about banner ads. It's about creating content. And other people weren't talking about that. Yeah. I wrote a book called Marketing the Moon, which is about the Apollo lunar program. Yeah. Nobody had ever written about the marketing aspects of the Apollo lunar program before. That was a pattern in the universe I was seeing. Yeah. And so that's actually pretty, let me just finish this thought, pretty related to the second idea, which is every book I ever write, and every time that I've got a book, it's absolutely, to use a music metaphor, it's original music that I write. I'm not being a cover band. And, so you've got a Pink Floyd shirt on right now. So I really feel like to get my ideas out there, I'm not taking ideas other people have written about and massaging them into something slightly new. I'm completely doing something that's utterly new.
Yes. I would wholeheartedly go along with that. And what I particularly notice about your work is, even on these massive topics, the PR, real-time PR, the urgency of that, marketing itself and all of the tools and techniques, you're not going deeply into the tools and techniques. You're actually talking about the strategies and the philosophies, much higher level. Now, we don't really have time to talk about the edited series of books that you oversaw. And that seemed to me much more nuts and bolts, the YouTubes, the cameras and so on.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to think about it, is that a lot of people said to me, wow, David, I really like your book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR. You have one chapter about search engine optimization. Can you write a book about that? Or I really like the ideas around video. Can you write a book about video marketing? And that would bore me to tears to dig in that deep. So what I did was I found some other authors and collaborated with them, and they wrote the books.
Yeah. And to some extent that also suggests to me that the New Rules of Marketing and PR is in its 7th edition now. So you keep coming back to that as the sort of cornerstone or capstone of your body of work. What's involved for you in revisiting that? And are they just sort of cosmetic tweaks, or are they completely revisions?
They're all complete revisions. And so it's been interesting because the first edition came out in 2007. I actually wrote the first edition in late 2005 and throughout 2006 and into very, very early. Actually, I finished at the end of 2006. And so by the time I finished the book, Twitter didn't exist. Facebook was only for students. YouTube was quite new. The most popular social network was MySpace in the world. It was a real different planet. And
possibly some people listening have no clue what MySpace is.
I know, right? And the book came out, and within the first couple of weeks, people said, "David, great book, but why didn't you include Twitter? Haven't you ever heard of Twitter?" I'm like, yeah, I've heard of Twitter. I'm on Twitter, but it's because it didn't exist, a year ago when I was writing. So I realized I had to do new editions. The other thing that happened that was super cool is that the book is being used in many hundreds of universities around the world as a text in the marketing and public relations and MBA programs. And so they evaluate books on a regular basis as they're going to use, and they need to have a fresh copyright date. So that's another reason why I wanted to, rewrite the book every couple of years. So right now it's sort of on the pattern of roughly every 2 years. A couple of times I went a little sooner than that, more like 18 months. And a couple of times went a little bit longer, like 2.5 years, but sort of on average, it's about every 2 years that I update it. It's about 20% new and revised content, although I look at every single word in the book and update any charts and figures and graphs. I delete stuff. There's things that change. Like in the last edition, Google Plus was mentioned. Google Plus no longer exists. So in the 7th edition, it's no longer there. Yeah. I also revisit every single story in the book. And if it's not doing its job, I'll replace it with a new story.
I mean, there are some great stories, and some that you've led with. I think in real-time marketing and PR, the United Breaks Guitars is a key case study there. But you go into it in so much more detail than so many other people have done. When you create the normal distribution, if you like, of visibility of stories. So you actually plumb in some detail with the case studies that you use in a way that other people just do in a very cursory way. And that's what I absolutely. Well,
there's a few things I do with case studies that I think is pretty different from a lot of people who use them. Number one, every case study I use is greenfield to me. If someone else has written about it, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So United Breaks Guitars is an interesting example because I learned about it quite literally the first week it came out. I spoke with Dave Carroll right away, instantly. And I said, Dave, this is super cool. I want to put it in one of my books. Can I do that? And he said, sure. I interviewed him a couple of times to get the data. And then, of course, many people wrote about United Breaks Guitars. And every time I put a story like that in, I want original quotes from the people who are doing it. I'm not copying it from somewhere else. Yeah. So I always speak with the people involved. In this case, Dave Carroll from United Breaks Guitars. And something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine with other business books is, how many times, for example, have you read something, Steve, where they've talked about Zappos, or they've talked about Apple, or they've talked about Nike. And it's like, God, again? Are you going to talk about Zappos again? I hear
another Starbucks case study, I'll die.
Another Starbucks case study. So my philosophy is new stories that people don't know, greenfield. Talk to the people involved, get original quotes, make it something new and different that people haven't seen before.
Yeah. I want to shift it a little bit, because shortly after you kicked off with this, and 15 years is a huge lifespan for a book, and
it is actually. I mean, kind of remarkable.
Was that in your mind when you started, that it was going to be amazing and hold on for that long?
Not at all. I did 2 books before The New Rules of Marketing and PR. I did one called Eyeball Wars, which is a novel.
It's a novel, yes.
I self-published that book. And that was back in the day that self-publishing was brutally hard.
Yeah.
And then the second book I wrote.
It might have been 1999. So it was really
around there, yeah. Yeah. And that was hard, because you had to find someone to typeset it and print it and figure out how to get a copyright and an ISBN number and how are you going to distribute the damn thing. And it was really tough.
Yes.
I'm glad I did it, but it was tough. And the second book was a book called Cashing In with Content, which was with a very small publisher. And it sold only 3,000 copies. So Eyeball Wars did pretty well. It sold about maybe 2,000 copies. Cashing In with Content, my second book, sold about 3,000 copies. So when The New Rules of Marketing and PR came out, number one, I was excited because it was a big publisher. It was Wiley. So it was the first time I had gotten a publishing deal from a big publisher. It was also the first time I tried. And then the second, and then what became interesting was the book came out. It sold more copies in the first week than my other 2 books combined had sold up to that point.
Yes.
And I think the first month we sold 30 or 40,000 copies. I mean, it was on a freaking roll. And then we hit the Business Week bestseller list 6 months in a row. I mean, it really was rocking and rolling from the very beginning.
So give me
So I did not expect that, because I was judging it based on my first 2 books.
Yeah. We probably shouldn't just can self-publishing, because it has changed so much in the last quarter century.
No. It's great. And I alluded to a new book I'm working on right now, my 12th book. It's going to be self-published.
Yay. I want to talk about that at the end, if you'll let me.
I'm actually going through the Kindle platform. So it's going to be
awesome.
self-published on Kindle using, Kindle, it'll be in the Kindle ebook format, but also the Amazon print on demand platform.
Awesome. Brilliant.
And it's just kind of an experiment because it's a real quick ebook. I've only been working on it for about 2.5 months, right. On a very timely subject. And I wanted to get it out super quick. And the big New York publishers that I've worked with do not move super quick. They move super duper slow.
Yeah. I want to just shift the focus slightly to Worldwide Rave, which I think is awesome.
Thank you.
And, all the pictures and everything, the huge, momentum that you created with that and Grateful Dead. Firstly, I want to talk about the format. These are about A5 or a little bit smaller than that.
Yeah. Somebody once told me they love them because they fit in a purse. Yeah. They're tiny books.
And also, the story with Brian Halligan, CEO of HubSpot, where you met looking at the stickers on your laptop and realizing that you were both deadheads, who absolutely loved Grateful Dead. What I love about this, apart from the stunning quote from Seth Godin at the beginning about be iconic. You have no choice. Just love that. That just sits.
Seth is awesome. He's blurbed probably 4 or 5 of my books.
He's amazing.
He's great.
He's amazing. But let's keep talking about you, because otherwise we could get sidetracked.
Yes, we could.
The marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead, and you returned to it in Fanocracy. So let's not blow the too much onto Fanocracy. But these are you, in a way, revealing your personality. And in Worldwide Rave, it's very much about the let it go theme. Don't be very parochial. Don't hold it in. Let it go. And Grateful Dead, the probably the first major stab at the idea of fans, or what Seth would call tribes.
I think you're right. I think you actually know my career better than I do. But you're right about the Grateful Dead book was a first stab at this fascinating idea of fans and how and why people become fans of something. And I'm a huge Deadhead myself. You can actually see behind me. Those of you who are only listening can't see, but behind me, we're doing this on video with some Grateful Dead stuff. I've been to 75 Grateful Dead concerts, and it's part of my life. My first show I saw when I was 17. The most recent show I saw a bit less than a year ago. And if we hadn't been on lockdown during COVID, I would have gone a couple of times more recently than that.
And you're only 19 now, so that's amazing.
There you go. I've done a lot since then. I just found it fascinating, the Grateful Dead, and there's been a lot of history written about them, and I didn't want to go there. And it was interesting how that came about with Brian. You mentioned that the way we met was Brian Halligan, the CEO of HubSpot, invited me to his office in 2007. And they were a tiny little company. They had no clients, only beta software, only 8 employees. And I brought my computer, I opened it up, and there was a Grateful Dead sticker on the back of the computer. And Brian said, hang on, we got to talk about the Grateful Dead sticker. What's going on there? I said, my favorite band, I love them. And I've seen, at that time, it was like 50 concerts. And Brian says, I've seen over 100 concerts. And so we became fast friends. And then within about 2 weeks, he invited me to become an advisor of HubSpot. And I've been on the advisory board ever since then. That's 14 years.
Yeah. And they've come a long way as well, haven't they?
They've come a fabulously long way. When I joined them, as I said, no customers, 8 employees, and beta software. They've now got a $12 billion US market cap, and are doing fabulously well. And so about 2 years after we met, we decided to do a webinar called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. Yeah. And we announced it on my blog and Brian's company blog. And then we had more than 5,000 people register, which was the biggest number of people to register for a HubSpot webinar up until that time. And so both of us like, whoa, there's something going on here. This is crazy. And so that's when we decided to do the book. And we pitched it to Wiley. They bought the book right away. And and we were off and running with that one.
A couple of things about this. One is, strikingly different in design and outlook. And you had a team of people, I think, working on this. Clearly, for those who are, watching the behind the scenes, there's colored panels everywhere and shots with drop shadows on, color throughout, little icons for Grateful Dead all over. Yeah. Conscious decision to design this. How did the design theme come about?
What we wanted to do was think about how we could create something that feels Grateful Dead-like. So the cover is actually a takeoff on an old style Grateful Dead cover. And there's actually an Easter egg in there for true Grateful Dead fans. I'm not, as I talk for the next 1 minute, you can see on the front cover itself. See if you can find the Easter egg on the front cover. But Grateful Dead fans a few found it, but very few. Anyway, we worked with Jay Blakesberg, who's the Grateful Dead's longtime photographer, has been since the late 1970s. He supplied the photographs for the book. And then Richard Biffle is one of the graphic illustrators that worked with the Grateful Dead for many years. And he drew up for us the original little icons in there. And we just wanted it to feel very Grateful Dead-like. So did you find anything interesting on the cover?
Yeah, 420.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So on the bottom of the book is a number. It's 420. And on the bottom of Grateful Dead posters, they typically had a number. And as far as we could tell, the number was the number that they used in the print house to determine, which poster this was. So we just said, let's put a number on the bottom. We chose 420, and 420, for anyone who's in Grateful Dead world knows, has a special connotation. The number 420. If you don't know what that connotation is, you can just type into Google 420 and you will find out.
So here's something, David. You have no fear about revealing your innermost personality traits. I mean, you were a Japanese male model, with the pipe and the tweed jacket, and you talk about this and you write about this. You Grateful Dead is all over there. In your living room, I think you have, is it the booster rocket from a Saturn V? I mean, I can't.
Yeah, and actually, since we wrote that, it's changed. I actually have built a museum since then in my house. I have a lunar module descent engine that's part of the museum.
Saturn V.
And I have all kinds. I have an Apollo guidance computer. I have all kinds of crazy cool stuff that's related to the book Marketing the Moon. Oh, you have a copy of Marketing the Moon too. This is
absolutely amazing. I haven't dared put any post-it notes or anything on this because I love this.
Thank you.
It's absolutely for a junkie. The moon landings were my Berlin Wall.
Me too.
Crawling down and watching that with and it's a brilliantly put together, beautifully done. MIT Press, which was a surprise to me
it was a surprise to me too. We ended up going with an academic press on Marketing the Moon because. The reason is it's a full color coffee table book, as we would call it. It's beautiful photos, wonderful form factor. And it just felt like my traditional publishers wouldn't be able to do as good a job with it. We did show it to Wiley and said that MIT Press wants it. And they said, please go ahead with MIT Press.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and really. And
I'm particularly proud that Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, the commander of Apollo 17, wrote the foreword to that book. Yes. And he became a friend of ours, my co-author, Rich Jurek, and I wrote that book. And in fact, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was super cool to work with. And we were able to interview, Buzz Aldrin and Al Bean and Walt Cunningham. We interviewed about a dozen Apollo astronauts. We interviewed some of the controllers who worked on the mission. We interviewed some of the people who worked in the public affairs department on the Apollo program. Sadly, many of them have passed on, even in the past, less than 10 years since we did the research for that book. So I'm really glad we got that research done when we could.
Yes. Gene was a lovely guy. I met him with our family. He was
cool.
speaking at Disney World when we were there at the John F. Kennedy Center, I beg your pardon. Very modest, very unassuming, almost, he was kind of like your, at that time, uncle or grandfather.
Yeah, he was such a super nice guy.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have dinner with him a couple of times. And,
fantastic.
It's just one of the things I really like is he's happy to answer any question about Apollo. He feels as though he was given a gift by the American people of that ticket on that spacecraft. And part of how he can give back to the American people is to patiently answer the same questions he's been asked thousands of times before and still answer with enthusiasm each time. So
making it new
anyway, great guy. And It was a fun book to write. I think it ended up being a PBS American Experience miniseries. I served as a producer on that. And
did you have any idea that was going to happen? Did you have that in the back of your mind?
I did not. No idea. I mean, I always thought there was like a remote possibility that it could, but it was like, it's not going to happen. And it was very serendipity. The way it worked out is the book packager we worked with on the book, who did the design and helped to collate the images, and super interesting guy, had a copy of the book on his table at his house. And then he lives in Rhinebeck, New York, I think it's about an hour and a half north of New York City. And Robert Stone, the filmmaker who ended up doing the film, walked into his house. They were friends for a party, and he saw the book and he goes, "Oh, cool. What's this?" He started thumbing through it. And then our book guy said, "Oh yeah, that's a book I just finished. It's really great, Marketing the Moon." And then Robert Stone said, "Wow, I really like this. This is great. Can I borrow this?" And he took it home, and then he came back and said, "I think this could make a good documentary." And then we ended up having lunch a couple of weeks later, and I said, "Yeah, let's do it. I'm game. I'm happy to help in any way I can." And it was fun to sign up as a producer on that and help to work with the filmmaker to get some of the interviews set up. And one of the coolest things was I spent an hour. There's two particularly cool things. I spent an hour with Robert when he was interviewing Buzz Aldrin. Second man to walk on the moon, iconic astronaut. And that was quite unbelievable. And the other thing, I think even more interesting,
he said that became the title of his book and the story as well, the video.
Magnificent Desolation. Yeah. His sort of one of the first things he said when he reached the moon, which became sort of one of his sort of taglines almost. And then the second thing that happened was really neat was I was part of the interview between Robert Stone and Jack King. And Jack King was the head of the public affairs department at Kennedy Space Center. And he's the one who actually did the countdowns. So it was his voice that would do, T minus 15 seconds and counting, mark, 14, 13, 12, ignition sequence start, 10, 9. He was the one who recited that. Yeah. And we interviewed him. And then I got goosebumps because we asked him if he'd recite a countdown, and he did. He actually recited a countdown for us. And super interesting.
So here's the thing. I mean, Gene Cernan did the foreword for that. Robert Scoble did the foreword for the the new rules of marketing and PR. You have a clear sense of a number of things. One of them is the idea is key. the idea is new. Also, you have, I think, a very strong sense that the format of the book that you write is significant. You're not afraid to bring in other people to help, position. The look and feel has to be right as well. The other thing is the power of the foreword. So you've got Tony Robbins in Fanocracy doing the foreword for that. So you have a sense of the structure of a book, not just in the sequence of the story, but in 3D space and also in time, with the need for an introduction from these other speakers. Say a little bit, why choose these people and this kind of person for the forward? What purpose does a forward serve in your mind?
So a forward in my mind is the place that somebody takes the world, the universe, if you will, and then puts the book in perspective, but somebody who's not the author, somebody who has a great deal of experience in general about the topic, but in some way is able to put it into perspective. And then because of who they are, command some respect. So for Marketing the Moon, having the last man to walk on the moon, Gene Cernan, put that into perspective. Super cool, super interesting. With Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, we got Bill Walton to do the forward, and Bill Walton, American NBA basketball Hall of Famer, is considered the world's biggest deadhead, not only because he's 7 feet tall, also because at that time he had seen 750 Grateful Dead concerts. Wow. And people who love the Grateful Dead, you see him out there because he's 7 feet tall. You can see him in the middle of the crowd because he's a foot taller than everyone else. And then with Fanocracy, Tony Robbins, just a world famous thought leader, really interesting guy. I speak at his events a lot. Yeah. And it just made sense to have him introduce that book.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about Fanocracy, in a way, clearly it's not a capstone, it's not the end of your writing. You're writing something else right now, which is fantastic to hear about. But what I love about it is you and your daughter, I think, Reiko, is that how it is?
Reiko, correct, Reiko, yeah.
Wrote this together. So I'd like to hear your thoughts in a moment on a little bit on collaboration, because you collaborated with many different people. But this one seems to me quite a tricky one, collaborating with a member of one's own family, a different generation as well. Yeah. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit about that. And also, I think with this one, the chapters were very clearly delineated, were yours or Reiko's, and then there were, I think there were some that was a bit more of a mix.
Yeah, there were one in the front and one in the back that we did a mix. I'll actually tell you the backstory about how that happened. We decided to collaborate on this book about 5 years ago. And so when we started, what happened was we decided initially to write the book using one voice. So in other words, take her thoughts and my thoughts and kind of essentially merge them into one neutral joint voice. And we wrote, for about 6 months, we wrote in that way. And neither of us felt like the book was working, and we couldn't really figure out why. And then I can't remember if it was her or me, but we kind of decided, let's take a stab at writing individual chapters. And it's roughly half and half, the number of chapters, how many she wrote and how many I wrote. And when we did that, the book came alive. Yeah. And so we say, chapter, I might get a chapter number wrong, but, chapter 7 by David, chapter 8 by Reiko, that kind of thing. And so our voices could clearly come through, and we're very different writers. She's a better writer than I am, I freely admit. But we have different approaches to that writing. And so that was a really important decision. And it was one that that made this book way better than if we had tried to to sand down,
homogenize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said in the acknowledgements, and this I think is something a lot of people forget about. You've talked about editing before, but Margaret McBride, your agent, I think in this, was the first to grasp a jumble of concepts could be turned into a coherent narrative. I know that. You can hear your voice coming through. Heard you speak. I've read your work. I can hear the voice coming through. I also think that, what I was very taken with, if not touched by, was the nurturing of another voice. Now, I know Reiko has done other work and, is well skilled in those areas too. Yeah. But something I'm concerned about is, well, we've got some amazing writers still in existence, and Seth is only 60, just turned 60, I think. Right. Tom Peters is still active. We had the Excellence Dividend last year. Still an amazing writer. Actually, yes. In some ways reminds me a little of you because he writes from the heart. He writes almost like a blog. It's almost like he's transcribed his seminars. And some of his books have been that way.
Absolutely does. I've read a bunch of his books.
But I'm trying to encourage more new voices, new executives, new writers with new ways of seeing the world. And I wanted to ask you what advice you'd have for some of them, because they're scared witless by some of the things that you've surmounted. Now, I'm almost wondering if there's what advice would you give to a younger self, a younger David Meerman Scott? I mean, I don't know that you need that because I think you've got the chutzpah to go through and do anything. But what advice would you give to entrepreneurs, executives? They've got a day job. Why should they write books? I'd love to have your thoughts on new voices. Why do we?
Yeah. So first of all, let me tackle the beginning part of the question and then get to the second part. It was very important for me to have the voice of the younger generation in Fanocracy, and to have the voice of not just a white man. My wife is Japanese, so my daughter is half Japanese, and she's a millennial mixed race woman. And she loves Harry Potter and getting dressed up to go to Comic-Con. And she's now an emergency room physician at Boston Medical Center, completely different from me. Yeah. So having our voices together in a book was super cool because, young mixed race woman and an older white guy. And so that was really important. And it made the book way better than it would have been otherwise. Regarding getting something out there and people who maybe are new to writing or somebody who feels like they might have something to say, I found that for me, in the way that I write, the books that have done well are the books where I was seeing patterns in the universe that nobody else was talking about. Now, I'm not going to say that other people didn't see those patterns in the universe. They probably did, but I wasn't seeing other people talk about and write about those patterns in the universe. So if we just go through some of the books we've talked about today, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, the pattern in the universe I saw there was that marketing on the web was not about banner ads and paying for attention. Marketing on the web is about publishing content. And in real-time marketing and PR, the pattern in the universe that I saw was that that marketing at that time, I wrote that probably 10, 11 years ago, marketing was turning real time. It wasn't something that you did for the future. It's something that you can do for the present, for right now.
You have to do.
And that was another thing. I did not see other people writing about that or talking about that or speaking about that. So it was a pattern in the universe I saw other people were not writing about. It's marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead. The idea that the Grateful Dead actually created a social network before Mark Zuckerberg was even born. was interesting to me. Marketing the Moon, the idea that the marketing aspects of the Apollo lunar program were just as important as the spacecraft to get us to the moon, because if we didn't market that program, it wouldn't have been funded. And so I think for younger authors who are finding their voice, I think it's critical not to copy other authors. And I don't mean copy as in literally copy, but I mean, don't follow in other authors' footsteps and just make their book a little bit different. I purposely, except for a very few handful of authors, I very rarely will read other authors' books. I read everything Seth Godin writes. That's an exception. But for the most part, I don't read other business books authors or marketing book authors. The second thing is, I'm a live music fan. I talked about that earlier. And to use a music metaphor, I think it's really important that a new author not be a cover band. Don't play someone else's music. Write your own music. And so what's a manifestation of a cover band in a business book world? Well, that's when somebody reads a bunch of business books, copies down quotes, creates a narrative, and quotes other business book authors. That's what a cover band is. That's a band in a bar that plays the Rolling Stones music rather than their own music. Yeah. And I think that if you're going to be successful in this game of writing business books, and nonfiction books in general, not just business books, you need to think about, what can I do that's original that I'm adding to the world, and not something that's just tweaking something else that already exists.
Yeah. Awesome. And that's a fabulous way to end. I mean, I've had a blast today. I really enjoy your work. I enjoyed your company in the last 45 minutes. How can people reach you if you are okay with that? What's the best way for people to reach you and contact you with their...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So most, but not all of my books have a website. So Marketing the Moon has its own website. Fanocracy has its own website.
I'll put links to those.
So you can go check those out. I'm on the web. I'm davidmeermanscott.com. I'm probably most active on social networks on Twitter, which is DM Scott. That's DMSCOTT. And I'm happy to interact if people want to reach out.
Awesome. David, thank you so much for your time today. I bag see the first interview when the new book comes out. Let me know.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So, my microphone has gone away. David had such a lot of material, and that's not all we covered in the chat. But let me just pick up on a couple of the points that he shared. And I think the big one is this idea of, be original. Don't be governed by what you've read in other books or what you think of other people. It's about finding your voice. Find the story that you want to tell. Don't be a cover band in David's terms. But also I want to take you back to the very beginning of the discussion, because there are a couple of really, really key points there. Books help people to find you. Writing a book is a great attraction strategy. And also this idea that you won't regret writing a book, although it takes a degree of effort. Now, he's been writing for 10 plus years, perhaps 15 years in total now. And he started with PDFs when PDFs were quite an unusual format. But of course, now the market is flooded with people writing PDFs. So he's taken each step to write a book, to write a graphically designed book. He's really taking steps to make sure that what he creates is different and the content of what he creates is different. So if you're interested in writing a book to attract attention to you, to your ideas, to the work that you do, or the work that your community does, then feel free to reach out to me. We have a number of resources that can help you to put a book together. At authors.fm, there's our podcast. We also have a written checklist. There's a software app that will help you out. And also, if you If you really want to sketch out what your book could do, should do, then we have a complimentary coaching session that will actually help you to put your thoughts in some order so that you can actually then take practical, actionable steps to get your book written and done. So you can find that at bookideaaudit.com. I'll put links to these in the description. That's pretty much all for today. I'm going to be back tomorrow looking at Tom Peters' work. We'll be here live at 9 a.m. GMT, and it'll be pretty much the same link, but I'll post a link on my LinkedIn and on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe if you're brand new to the channel so that you get all the notifications and all the new videos. I don't think we have any additional questions that I haven't dealt with in the chat, so it's all remains for me to say is thanks for watching, thanks for sharing my company this morning, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. See you tomorrow, live at 9. Let's just do a final outro checkout. If you've ever been told you should write a book, then you should write a book. In his foreword to You Should Write a Book, multiple best-selling author David Meerman Scott says there's no better way to market your business than to write a book. There's an interview with VERNE, founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization, on how to use your book to attract new clients. There's an interview with Professor LYNDA GRATTON of London Business School on how to use your book to develop your influence globally. There's another interview with former CFO Stephen Berry on how to use your book to launch a speaking business. There's an interview with Daniel Priestley, founder of Dent Global, on how to use your book as the cornerstone of your marketing. In the interview with Dr. Tommy Weir, a scientist in residence at MIT, we'll show you how to use your book to position your products and services. There's an interview with Marshall Goldsmith on how to use your book to demonstrate your unique expertise and processes. There's another interview with Rob Moore, the disruptive entrepreneur, on how to use your book to extend your brand and create new product lines. There's an interview on building a professional service firm with Dom Morehouse, who created Morehouse Consulting, then grew it and sold it to BT in just 5 years. There's also a case study interview with ALOK SINHA, former CEO of Capita Services in India, on how a corporate executive can use a book to become a global thought leader. There's an interview with Penny Power OBE on how to write a memoir that matters. In the interview with Peter Larange, one of the best-known business school deans of all time, by the way, you'll learn how writing your book can clarify your thinking and your thought leadership. In the interview with Karen DILLON, the former editor of Harvard Business Review, you'll learn how to engage and inspire your community to listen and act on your advice. In the interview with Todd Satterston, former president of 800 CEO Reed, you'll learn new ways to publish and distribute your book. And finally, there's an interview with Steve Piasanti, the founder of Barrett Kohler Publishers and probably the best editor in the world, on how to market your book in the 21st century. That's the lineup of interviewees and case studies that we put into You Should Write a Book. This is for thought leaders, trusted advisors, anyone who wants to build credibility and authority to win new business or to change the world. You can order the hardback or the Kindle edition right now on Amazon, but don't forget to download the PDF edition and get all the book bonuses for free at youshouldwriteabook.co.uk. Do it now.